In today's show, we're going to cover filtering all of the SharePoint columns for PowerApps, right? So we're going to build us a simple Power App, we're going to throw a gallery in there, and then we're going to go through the filter function against every one of the columns. There's so many columns, I couldn't remember them all, so I wrote them down, right? So we're going to go through text multi-line, number currency, date, yes, no, hyperlink picture column, calculated column, location column, choice column, multiple choice column, lookup column, person column, manage metadata column, created by column, and the ID column. Oh my goodness, that's a lot of columns, but we're going to walk through filtering each one. Remember, you can always jump down below to the chapters if you want to jump to filtering a specific one, though in each one I am going to kind of sprinkle in little tips around like greater than's, less than's, like talk about delegation a little bit randomly without getting too deep. So there's a lot of value in watching all of them and then using the chapters later for reference. All right, that's enough of the blah, blah, blah. Let's switch over to my desktop and take a look. Okay, so here goes nothing. So the first thing we should probably do is go check out the SharePoint list. So over here, I made a list. I called it all columns. And these are the type of lists I like to keep around just so I can always quickly practice and check. But you can see, I just literally got a title, text, number, blah, blah, blah. Like all of them, I threw in like 6 records, some with overlapping data, some with unique data. So we could just kind of, search and filter out the data and kind of work with that. Now here we real quick, we'll go over here to list settings. And so from here, if we just scroll down a little bit, so there's all the columns. If you wanted to reference them later, if you want to make your own version of this, that's what they all are, right? So there you go. So that's our SharePoint list. So let's go over here. We're going to add that. So we'll go to data sources. We'll say add data. We'll search for SharePoint. We'll click on SharePoint. We'll click on one of my connections to SharePoint. And then over here, we're going to click on PowerApps videos, that's where the list is. And then it is all columns. And then we'll click on connect, which is probably under my face. So that adds the SharePoint list in. And then all we're going to do is add ourselves a simple gallery, right? We're not trying to get into a lot of the nuances. We really just want to cover all of the different column types. So there's the gallery. We'll set it up to all columns. And then we'll just change this over here to title, subtitle, and body. And so there you go. All the things are in here. Now, one of the things that we also want to make sure that we're avoiding when we're doing this and checking for is we're going to worry about delegation, right? Because some things are delegable, some are not. If you don't know what delegation that is that just means, is the server processing it or is it processing locally? And we don't want things that are not delegable. We don't want things that have to be processed locally. So to make sure we're not having any delegation confusing, we're going to go up here to settings and we're going to scroll down here and we're going to set the data row limit from the standard 500 down to 1. This is the technique a lot of people don't use enough, but this will, if anything is not delegable, it's only going to return 1 result. So we would immediately have that red flag that, oh, maybe there's a problem here. Now, if you don't know anything about delegation, just go check out the video up there on delegation. We're not going to cover it in any more detail than that for this video. All right, so the first column we're going to do is text columns, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to go here, we're going to write filter, all columns. After our data source, we're going to go comma, and then the logical test is going to be column name. Remember, you always want to write it column name equals something. So in our case, it's going to be column name, and we named it text column to make it super simple. And we're going to say equals and the word 1, and we'll close our parentheses. And so that gets back 3 results. We went and looked at the SharePoint list. We've got 3 over there where I used the word 1 as our text column. Okay, now as you're doing these filters, remember, PowerApps just wants what it wants. It doesn't care how you get there. So we're filtering like that. If we want to make that so they were filtering it by typing it in, right, we could just throw ourselves a text input up here. We'll get rid of the default. And then now if we go down here, we would say filter text column equals, and it would just be text input 1.text. Right now, blank, nothing is matched, but if we hit play and then we were to go here and type in 1, we're going to see the items, right? Probably not a practical experience to create, but that would absolutely work. Because the key message as you go through all of these is it's just about figuring out, all right, what is my column type and what does it want? In this case, it wants text. It doesn't care if you get there by hard coding it, by using a variable, by using a function, by using a control, by doing a calculation. It doesn't care. It just wants text that matches, in this case, the letters O and E, and then that will work, okay? So don't overthink these things. Now, this example though, right, we're gonna jump right into a cool example right away. This didn't really work awesome, right? Because we had to wait until you typed in the whole word 1. Keep in mind that one of the coolest functions you can use when you're filtering SharePoint data is the StartsWith function. So you put StartsWith, and then you put your column name. So in our case, it would be text column, and then do a comma, and then you type in, it wants text again, right? So text input 1.text, close that. Notice it works, but what's cool about this, if we get rid of all of it, it shows everything. So if StartsWith gets nothing inputted, then it shows you everything. That's nice. If we then go up here and we start to type in O, we get all the ones, right? O-N-E, we get them. if we typed in TW or a T, right, we get 2. Now notice that starts with is not search, right? Because the word 2 has an O in it, just like 1. But if we type in O, it starts with. So what's the first letter? It's O. It's only matching these first letters. It's not matching all of them. So starts with is a nice trick to make your text column searching better, but you do have to be careful of its limitations. If you're thinking, well, Shane, why I want to use a search function, it's not delegable. That's a different video. I'll leave a link up there to that one as well. That's a whole nother topic. So there you go. So there's our first column, text columns. And this would be the same whether it was a text column or multiple lines of text, right? There's no difference between filtering those two columns. Hey, if you're enjoying this video, then be sure to check out my training over at training.poweraapps911.com. We've got on-demand classes, we got live classes, we got private classes, we even have university, which is a 6-month program with a mentor. We've got lots of training options just like this. Or you could just hit the like button down on the video. Not as exciting, but I appreciate that as well. Either way, it's your choice. If you want to continue learning with me, check it out. Next up is number. So with number, we're going to just type in number column, and then we'll just say equals 3. Notice there's no quotes around the 3. Oh, apparently there's not a number. Let's go over here. Oh, I changed my numbers. All right, we'll do 77. Boom, it finds the item, right? So numbers, the number column, make sure that this right-hand side here is a number, right? If I put this in quotes, it's going to yell at me and we get a little error here, right? It's going to find it still, but if you hover, it's going to tell you incompatible type for comparison. These types can't be compared, number and text. So it's solving the problem. It's figuring it out, but you don't want this type of scenario. If you want a number, put a number right here. Oh, gotta do that. And so bingo, bango, we're good. Now with number columns, we could also do something like, what if we want to say less than 77? And so now it's getting 1, 20, 11, 12, 32, right? All the fields or all the items that are the number is less than 77. So you can build these type of things. What if you want a range? What if you want less than 77 and greater than 15, right? Then you just go here and you say, and number column greater than, oh, I didn't spell number column greater than 15. And so now it's taking and it's finding all the records that both of these things are true for. So less than 77, 20 and 32 are less than 77, and greater than 15, 20 and 32 are greater than 15. If you want to do less than or equal to, so 12 is the lowest number I've got in there. So if you just go here and you'd say less than or greater than or equal to 12, and now 12 shows up in the list. So you can mix and match. Number columns, currency columns work the exact same way, right? They are just number columns with some formatting on them. So don't overthink those. But you can see we've got the ability to do ranges like this. And once again, these numbers could be coming from a lookup, from a variable, from an input. It doesn't matter. Now, if you were going to use this input up here though, make sure that you are smart about it. So if we go here and we just change this to say number column less than, and then we do our text input 1.text again, it's going to be mad at us. And if we hover, it's going to tell us, you gave me text basically, and I was expecting numbers. So in this case, we need to convert this text into numbers. So we would use the value function around our text input like so, which is going to get nothing, right? That errors because it has text in it. So I might change this and say, hey, your format now is number. And now if we go up here and type in 44, boom, we've got answers, right? You have to kind of be smart about that. It wants what it wants, but you've got to shape it to what it wants. So if you want to use a text input for your input here, you've got to use the value function around it. So make sure you convert those text numbers into numbers. All right, next up is a date column. So if we go here, we'll delete this out. And so date column in PowerApps, right? And we're just going to say date column is less than today. And so if we go into your gallery, and remember, always make this easier on yourself. Just put this in the gallery so you can see what the date column is. So you can see that like today is 9/22, and these are all dates that are previous to that, right? So date columns, number columns, they both support that whole less than, equal than, all those type of functions in there. It's great. And then it just wants a date. Doesn't care if you got it from date. It doesn't care if you want to hard code it, right? So if we did date value 12/25/2023, right? Christmas. This I should have done Halloween since my office is decorated for Halloween. I didn't do it. Someone else did it. Jennifer and Stacy. That's right. They did that. But so you can see here that the date value function just turns the text string of that into a date object. And if you hover or cover it here, right, it's going to tell you it made that date for you. So that's how it's doing the comparison. And so that's how we're able to get all these back. You could use a date picker, look it up. It just wants what it wants. Doesn't care how it gets there. Okay. So that's your date columns. Yes, no. They're a little bit weird in SharePoint. I don't love the way they work, right? So we have a yes, no column. And so here you can say yes, no column equals yes. If you do this, it gives you an answer, but notice the blue line, right? And it's telling you, hey, incompatible type, Boolean and text. So over in SharePoint, when you create a yes, no column, it is technically a Boolean column. And Boolean just means true or false, right? 0 or 1, if you think about it in like SQL terms. And so yes, no, right? Yes is true, no is false. And so here you're tempted to write the formula this way, but this is not delegable, so you might not get all your results. So what you're always going to want to do here is you're going to want to say yes, no column equals true. That would get all the trues, or all the yeses, and then false. So this is one of those weirdities of PowerApps and SharePoint together. Just use yes, no like that. Also remember, filter all it wants, right? It says filter data source where this is true or false. So in reality, if you want all the ones where yes is true, you can just write it like that. You don't have to say yes, no column equals yes, right? Because yes, no column is already returning true or false. So that would be that. Or if you could do this, and then you could throw a not around it. If you do that, you're gonna get the whole delegation warning again. You don't want to do it that way, but you can, if you do it this other way, that way also does not work. So in this case, the only way to get the falses would be to say yes, no column equals false. Okay. So just keep that in mind. Right? Don't be afraid to poke the bear and try some stuff there. But at the end of the day, if you want, if you want the trues, you can just put yes, no column. If you want the falses, the nots to that, then you have to say yes, no column equals false. All right, speaking of delegation challenges, next up is the hyperlink column. So the hyperlink column, if you say here, you're going to just have to type in the whole URL. Like so, notice that the hyperlink column right away, it is not delegable. So there is no delegable way to search it, no matter how you twist and turn it. And right now we see no results because we set that limit to 0 or to 1. So I needed to do the training URL, right? That would have been the first one. This is the second one. So basically, if you have hyperlink columns, you can't filter on those in a delegable way. Boo. Also, if you know a lot about SharePoint, you know that like when you create a hyperlink column, that there is not only, I'm gonna say edit all here, not only is there the URL, but there's also a description column. So that description column or the text column that goes with the hyperlink column, that never is returned to PowerApps, so you can't filter on it even in non-delegable ways. It's just not there. It doesn't exist, right? And the easiest way to prove that to yourself if you're ever challenged by it, right? If we set this back to all columns, so we see all of our records, remember, just prove to yourself here, because if you go to hyperlink column, it's like, look, there's the whole URL. If you try like a dot, there is no dot description, dot title, dot nothing, right? Hyperlink columns, kind of a bummer column when it comes to filtering and in PowerApps in general, because there's just no way to work with the other half of that column. Next up, we have calculated columns. And so let's just throw that in here. So remember, calculated columns aren't really a special column type. All a calculated column really is a text column, a number column, a date column, etc., that is being calculated for you. So if I want to filter on that, so you can see I made that one say yes, no by combining two of my fields. So if we say filter all columns, and then we said calculated column equals yes dash no or yes dash one and close that, we get the hit. But just like the hyperlink column, the calculated column is never delegable. What do you do, right? And in this case, I'm calculating them based on the other ones, so that would be fine. But I've never ran into this in the real world. I've never had a customer ask me to calculate or filter on one of these, but I wanted you to see that, make it calculated, it breaks delegation completely. So next up, we want to do the location column, right? So I'm going to type in location column. And so if I started types in, notice it doesn't offer me just the column. It only offers me the different attributes of it. So in this case, location column name. And so then if we say equals, and then I believe one of my column or one of my data is named PowerApps 911, close that, and look at that, we return multiple items. So the location column in SharePoint is delegable, but it's not the column as a whole. You're going to use the different pieces. So whether you want to, do that based on the city, the state, or those different facets of that column type, you can do that. All right, next up, a much more common one. How about the choice column? So we know in PowerApps, if you go here and you type in choice column dot value, that's how you see what you did in the choice column. And so for me, it was yes, no, or maybe. Remember, and I name my columns this very specific way. Yours is probably not called that. It's probably called project status or something else, right? Like I use simple column names. Don't overthink that part. So if we want to filter on one of those, all we're going to have to do is we're going to go up here. We're going to do choice column. You're going to do that dot again, dot value, and then you're going to say equals no. That's one of my choices. I will change it to maybe. That's the easier one. So yeah, there's my records that used the choice of maybe. It's that simple. It's a text match on the value field. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Now, one of the most common things that people want to do here though, is they're going to say, hey, I want to insert a drop down, right? I want to see those choices. So where's my drop down? It's an input drop down. And so here for your items, remember that's a table of stuff. What you can use is you can use the choices function, and then you're going to say all columns dot choice column, right? So your column name, that will go to SharePoint and we'll get the choices, right? So yes, no, maybe, or red, green, blue, yellow, whatever your choices were, approved, not approved, whatever you did over there, they show up. And so now to filter by that, right, to drop down, we would just change this and we'd say filter where choice column equals drop down one dot selected. Now that doesn't work, boo, right? So once again, we're just going to do drop down value and then dot selected dot value. And so there's all the yeses. And now if your user changes from yes to no to maybe, boom, they've got that for them, right? So a lot more complex stuff you can learn to do with that. But right now we just want to talk about choice columns and that. And so pretty straightforward. Now, what if instead of a choice column, you had a multi-choice? Well, let's go down here to the gallery first and take a look at that. So we'll go multi-choice column. Now, if you do that same dot value, it's going to yell at you because that's a table. So a multi-choice column in SharePoint, right? What does that mean? That means that when I was over here, I could choose multiple colors. I chose blue and brown, right? I could add green in here if I wanted, right? I can choose multiple colors, make multiple choices. That data is stored as a table. That's why this is yelling at you about a table. So in your gallery to see that data back, you would have to do something like the concat function. And so that will turn the table into the string, right? So now it's blue, comma, brown, and then maybe we'll just put a little, comma between them. And so now it's blue, comma, brown, right? So that concat, that's how you would show that back in a label inside your gallery. Now, how do we filter on that data? That's a little harder. So what we're going to have to do up here is we're going to go up here and we're going to say, all right, I want to find all the ones where brown is one of the options, right? So I'm going to go here. I'm going to just type in the word brown, and then we're going to use the in operator. So just the word in, and then what column that is multiple choice column, like so. So notice right away that that does work. Oh, brown is not in the first record. Let's change this to blue. And then we have to do our dot value down here again. Oh, see, I don't do this very often either. I mess it up. Okay, so filter all columns blue in multi-choice value in that table data that we did. Notice that it is not delegable, right? The little line, the little yellow triangle. There is no delegable way to filter a multi-choice column like this. There's like super shenanigans you can do, but let's just make it simple. You can't do this. Right? If you're watching this beginner's video for PowerApps, you're probably not ready to do any of the shenanigans that would be like go and hit the API and get it, or loop through a bunch of data. If you're trying to write filter formulas like this, there is no way to do this in a delegable fashion. So that means if your delegation limit's 500, it would only check the first 500 limits for the ones that have blue in there. Right? If we switch this to green, and then so green is not in the first record, so it doesn't work. And I think if we switch it to brown, I think brown is now in the first record. There you go. So that would work. Now with this column also, right, multiple choice field over in SharePoint, with this column, what if you wanted to check where brown and blue are in that column? Not possible. Like literally, no, just no. There isn't even a non-delegable way to do it in this syntax, because you can't say brown in multiple choice. I guess you could say brown in multiple choice and blue in multiple choice column value. In should be lowercase. All right, well, there you go. That would find it. Once again, not delegable. I really just made that up on the fly. How about that? Right, totally not delegable, but that would give you the options that you're looking for. You could change that and to an or if you want to find anyone that had blue or brown. Just remember, multiple choice columns, delegation, going to be a challenge for you. Okay, next up, we got lookup. So let's just go down here. And once again, we're just going to set this to this item dot lookup. And this is just one of those Shane things, right? So lookup column dot value. Right. This is one of those Shane things that I won't always try to do here, is I want to make sure that I can see the data, right? I want to prove to myself what the data is. It makes doing all this easier, right? So if we kind of chop this off, we just should see that value for all of them, right? Labels are great, prove it, show it, all right? And so now what if we want to find where, look up where the person is Greg, right? So then we're going to go here, we're going to say filter all columns, lookup column dot value equals Greg. And there's Greg's record. What? I know, right? And if we look at that lookup column over here, just in case you're not familiar with those, right? So list settings, lookup column. And so then right here, you can see that I'm looking up against my employees list. And in this column, I'm using first name, right? So that is why that first name is showing up, and that's what the value is. If I wanted to look up against these other fields, that's a whole different story. I don't even know if I can do those. Like I'd have to add them to show up here. Let's try it. Let's add last name. I don't know. We'll find out if this works or not. We'll say, okay, right? What fun it would be if we did an experiment. Go back over here. Because we changed our SharePoint list, right? We got to make sure we go to data sources. We got to do a refresh here. And so now let's try lookup column. Look, lookup column last name now shows up here. And then now we'd say last name equals Young. And it yells at us right away. What's it yelling about? Found record. We want text. So if we do a dot here, dot value. There you go. All right. I did not know that that worked, but it does because me and Nicola, right? And we're seeing more than one item, so we know it's delegable. So I learned something literally by making the video. How crazy is that? Lookup columns can be interesting. Also, speaking about lookup columns, you might have noticed that lookup columns have that same allow multiple values. So the same way that we did multiple choices. So if you do that with your lookup column, the data would then be stored as a table. And so that in operator that we talked about for multiple choices would apply here as well. So hopefully you're not trying to do anything that crazy, that you're just asking for trouble at that point, but technically it is possible. All right, back over here. Person column, almost the same exact thing again, right? So person column, do a dot. So then there's all their different things. So we'll just do person column dot display name equals me. And so you can see that item 3 and item 6, I was the person column in the person column. And so you're able to match. Typically, you're probably not going to match on display name. You're probably going to match on email. And you probably might find yourself doing something like this. Email equals user.email, right? The currently logged in user's email. And so that finds that, right? So this is one of those scenarios like if you're trying to, the filter is the manager, you're trying to only show people that they're listed as the manager or something like that, or the approver. So this would filter out the data just based on the logged in user being the person in this email column in their logged in email, right? So kind of a nice little filtering trick that we have to use from time to time. So created by, just FYI, created by is also a, is just really a person column. There's no difference, right? So clearly I created 5 of the 6 records. I think Chewy created the other one. And so that's why they're all showing up. So person created by same column type, just created by is a system column, modified by same column type. All right, so you could use any of those to filter out the data, all delegable. Okay, 2 more columns, we're almost done. So then this one is one that doesn't come up very often anymore, but there's a manage metadata column. And so the manage metadata column, it stores all of this, label, path, term, GUID, value. And so then you would just say value equals, I think it's item 1. Nope. So we'll just go down here and we'll just say, right, we'll set this back to nothing. So we'll just go here, doom. All right. So there's all of them. And so then I don't use manage metadata enough to even remember how it's structured. So we'll say manage metadata column dot label. All right. Term 3. So, or let's just search for term 1 since that's the second item. So we'll see whatever shows up. Okay. So we'll just copy that. Term 1 with a capital T. And so here we'll go filter, comma, paste, and then we'll say equals term 3. Okay, so that got item 1, which we know because of the delegation. So if we change this to term 2, we get nothing, right? So manage metadata columns does not look like they are delegable. Very sad, very expected though, right? They're goofy little critters. Yeah, so all of these different dots are turning the blue line automatically. So I'm going to say that none of them work. The last one, yes. Okay, so manage metadata columns, womp womp, not delegable at all for searching. But hopefully you're not using manage metadata anymore. It's it's old and I didn't like it when it was brand new. So that's just a Shane opinion. Okay, one other nuance here. So ID, right? So let's say filter ID equals 3, and that finds a third record, right? ID is that built-in ID column inside of SharePoint. It is a number column, so you just use numbers. The problem with the ID column I want you to see though, is that it is not able to use greater than and less than, which I don't understand why, because it breaks a lot of scenarios for you. But if you say greater than 3, we get nothing, right? Because as soon as you do greater than or less than, that is not delegable. Only with the ID column. I don't know what's special about it. I think it's just one of those things they do to make me angry. Either way, it is not delegable, right? We could say not equal to 3. And so the first record is not equal to 3, so that's why it matches. But it is a commonly used column that doesn't work as well as we want, but as long as you're just, so you're always not going to ever be filtering on ID, you're going to be doing lookups on ID most likely. There you go. That is every SharePoint column filtered in PowerApps, right? Hopefully this worked, right? It's kind of geared towards beginners, but a lot of my seasoned pros, right? We run in columns, we run in challenges with. So, and I kind of came up with this. I was getting ready for that training class. And so I decided to, make this video. It'll be good supplemental for them and a little bonus content for you guys. So, questions, comments, leave them below. Another little question. Do you want me to do this same video for Dataverse? I bet you do, but you got to tell me in the comments if you do, because those Dataverse videos don't always get all the most views. So I got to make sure you guys are going to watch them before I make them. All right. And with that, I'm going to say thanks and have a great day.